Good evening, everybody. Hi, how's everybody doing tonight? Good. Got a good crowd. You're a hearty crowd. You made it through the snowstorm, and you know what? I got rear-ended on the way here. It's pretty minor. No damage to my vehicle. A little damage to the other person's license plate. But what a way to come to a meeting that's about climate change and the impact. I felt the impact tonight. Um, Thank you for being here. I'm going to introduce you to our panelists and as we go along here, but I wanted to set up just where this meeting, where this event came from. And I think it probably goes back to May 2022. We had the direct show that really impacted Stittsville. And ever since then, I feel like certainly for our office, and I think for a lot of residents in the community, the weather has certainly been top of mind, right? Shortly after that, I think it was April 2023, there was a significant ice storm, and there were many people who lost power over the Easter weekend in 2023. Since then, we've had extreme heat, we've had smoke from wildfires, just one thing after another. And often the word I hear from people is they're surprised or they're not expecting this, right? So, and then on top of that, we've got population growth. Our city is growing, like many cities across Ontario, across Canada. That adds another challenge. We're challenged in some ways by the financial situation, by the economy. How do we pay for all of this infrastructure and all the change that we might need to manage here? So all these things keep coming up in different ways. And thought we'd invite some of the experts at the City of Ottawa and some of the partner groups that the city works with to give you an idea about what they are doing, where they're seeing challenges, where they're adapting, where they're trying to bring change, and have a bit of a discussion about what that looks like. So the plan for tonight is we have 5 different groups, and I've asked each of them to prepare a short overview, short presentation to tell you a bit about what they're focused on this topic. And then we're going to have a chance for a little bit of some follow-up questions, a little bit of a panel discussion. And we're going to make sure we leave a lot of room at the end so that if residents have any questions, you'll have a chance to ask directly to the panelists, and we'll try to get as many questions and answers in as possible. Okay. And before we get going, I do want to say a thank you to a few folks in particular. Thank you to the Lions Club who are hosting us here tonight. Thank you to Pat for audiovisual, and a hello to everyone who's watching the webcast this evening. And thank you to Kara and to my team for organizing tonight's event. It takes a lot to put an event like this together. So thank you very much. And thank you to all of you for, as I said, braving the weather tonight and coming out and being engaged and interested in these issues. So we're going to go to our presentations, and I'm going to introduce each panelist one by one for you. And we're going to start with the City of Ottawa Climate Change Unit. And we have Julia Robinson, who's going to be presenting, and Hiran Sendanayake is here as well. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Volume's okay? You can hear me? I'm going to go off script right away. Show of hands, how many of you, the events that Councillor Gower just mentioned, how many of you were affected by those events that we're talking about? The flooding, the ice storm, the power outages, heat waves. Okay, so there's a reason why you're here. I always like to get a sense of what people's personal connection is. So thank you again for coming out this evening. My name is Julia Robinson. I am the program manager for climate adaptation in the city's climate change and resiliency team. And I'm joined, he just left me, but he'll come on in a minute, come in a second. So Hiran Sendanayake is the manager of water resources planning and engineering, and I wanted to bring him along to speak specifically to some of the infrastructure related climate adaptation programs. So Councillor asked me to kick off today's presentation by talking a little bit about what the city is doing for the overall climate resiliency strategy, Climate Ready Ottawa. So I will provide a bit of a context on that front. Fast Hiran to do just a couple of slides talking about flooding in particular. I'll speak very briefly to some of the programs that are available to support residents to make decisions. And then I know a lot of the other panel members will be speaking about some of those programs. So next slide, please. So as I said, I work in the city's team that is responsible for the climate change master plan. So this is the overarching strategy at the city for how we are both mitigating and adapting to climate change and how we're preparing for the coming decades. So just as a starting point, as a reminder, when we speak about mitigation, we're referring to the need to reduce our energy consumption, reduce our emissions. And energy evolution is the city's strategy for how we are reducing those emissions. Adaptation is how we prepare for the impacts that we're already feeling and we know we're going to get worse in the decades to come. And Climate Ready Ottawa is the city's plan for how we are building resilience to climate change. And that's today the focus of today's session. Next slide, please. So why is acting now important? Well, we know, and the councillor spoke to this, Ottawa's already felt some of the extreme weather events, the derecho, the tornadoes, the ice storm, the wildfire smoke. And average temperatures in Ottawa have already increased by 1.3 degrees since the 1940s. And our climate projections, is indicated up on this slide. I apologize for those who can't see past my head. We know that it's going to get a lot worse. These numbers are going to get more extreme. So we'll be facing extreme heat. We'll be facing heavier and more intense rainfall. We'll be looking at more severe weather in the years ahead. Next slide, please. So what is Climate Ready Ottawa? It's the long-term strategy and a 5-year plan to really address those top risks from extreme heat, from flooding, from shifting seasons, and from severe weather. And the plan really focuses on protecting people, property, critical services, to control costs and also build community climate preparedness. So this plan was approved by the Environment and Climate Change Committee on October 21st. It's fresh out of the gate, and we will be presenting it to Council on November 12th, day after tomorrow. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the strategy focuses on action to address the top risks that are facing Ottawa. And it's important to note that there are many actions already in place to prepare for climate change, but we know that further proactive action is needed to really be ready for those escalating risks that I've been talking about, dealing with increasing costs, with service disruptions, and with impacts on residents. So as outlined up here, the greatest risks to our communities are coming from extreme heat, from flooding, and from extreme weather. And yet we know that wildfire smoke, drought, new diseases, and illnesses are also on the rise. We need to ensure that city services continue to function during extreme weather. And we've already taken steps to understand what the risks are to our drinking water plants, to our wastewater plant. And now we need to shift to looking at our other critical infrastructure and services. We can expect rising costs for building maintenance, for road and pipe renewal, for emergency response, all driven by changing climate conditions and more extreme weather events. But the research shows that actually acting early is a more cost-effective approach than waiting until after the damage occurs. And protecting our natural environment is also a really critical way to provide those climate benefits. So a final point I wanted to make on this slide is about the fact that risks are not felt equally. So the strategy really pays attention to those who may be more disproportionately impacted by climate change. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, Climate Ready Ottawa is the city's response to these escalating climate risks. The strategy sets a long-term vision and it has a 5-year action plan. It recommends concrete actions under 5 themes, and it focuses really on those most pressing risks to people, to property, and to services. So just briefly, resilient communities. This is about supporting residents and communities to be better prepared for climate risks like flooding, extreme heat, and emerging health risks. So it includes things like flood risk assessments and plans, cooling features like misting stations and shade, and community education and outreach. Under resilient infrastructure, we're looking at ways to design and maintain city buildings, our transfer station, and water systems to withstand those changing climate conditions and provide continued services. We're also protecting our critical infrastructure to make sure it functions in extreme weather. Under resilient natural environment, we're protecting and enhancing trees and natural systems. And for extreme weather, enhancing Ottawa's readiness to respond to the increasingly frequent and severe climate events. And finally, continuing to consider climate change in all city plans, policies, and budgets. And I think as you'll see with the other panelists, today's panel, it demonstrates that the city can't build climate resiliency alone. It really takes effort by everyone, whether it's other partner organizations or by individuals in the room. And other panelists, of course, will speak in more detail to some of these climate resiliency programs. But I do want to give Haran, we thought with the focus on infrastructure today that we talk a little bit more about some of the flooding programs that are in place. So I'll turn it over to Haran.
Thanks, Julia. Next slide, please. Even on a narrower topic than what Julia was trying to cover, only 2 slides here, and there's a lot more information to possibly ask. If you have questions, I'm available for the entire session and afterwards as well. But I just want to give an opening kind of summary of the concept of inland flooding. Now, most people probably know about inland flooding. You probably know about riverine flooding. Perhaps you don't use those words, and maybe some of you have experienced flooding in your homes in past rainfall events. Inland flooding is a way for me to distinguish between riverine flooding and everything else. And the everything else, there's a lot of everything else. There could be flooding from the rear yard, flooding from water accumulating in the street, flooding from an overwhelmed storm sewer, flooding from an overwhelmed sanitary sewer, flooding from groundwater. Now, those are general categories, but those don't actually tell how water gets into the home. When I think about flooding, and it's fair to think about flooding in other ways for sure. When I think about flooding, I think about when water comes into the building. That's where we don't want water. That's flooding to me. I also think about damage. So for me, any water from outside inside my house is damage, but damage could be other things, damage to vehicles or other type of infrastructure. So for me, how water gets into the home is also a part of the flooding perspective. Is it through the window well? Is it through a depressed driveway? Is it through the connection to the sewer, or is it some other means? Next slide, please. And so again, I probably, maybe I'm already over time, but yeah, I think I am. There's a lot of things the City of Ottawa does with respect to flooding. It's an ongoing process. These are just a couple of words here, but let me just highlight for Stittsville. You may be interested in risk assessment and mitigation programming. This is where we're already having problems. What are we doing about that? Response and preparation for rainfall events. It's not the same as riverine flooding because we don't have the time. A rainfall happens. We know it's coming. We don't know where it's going to hit, and we don't know how intense until after it's happened. Sometimes the rainfall event is only an hour, and that's enough, right? Unlike riverine flooding. And but there are things that the City of Ottawa is trying to do to help residents prepare, and renewal of infrastructure is another piece of the puzzle. The preparation I should just mention, I'll probably mention it again later today, but the City of Ottawa has programs to help residents with protective plumbing devices which prevent water from coming into the home. I'll stop there. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions, and I'm happy to take them at the appropriate time.
I just have 1.5 more slides. So I did mention I wanted to just highlight a couple of the programs. Haran just mentioned one, the residential protective plumbing program. But the importance, I guess, of everyone taking action. We know we've been talking about things that the city has been taking, and that's a big focus, of course, within Climate Ready Ottawa, but we all need to take steps to prepare. And that's ourselves, our families, our homes, our communities. So as Haran mentioned, and others will mention, the city does have several programs to support you to take those steps yourselves. It can be through educational information. It can be through toolkits, or in some cases, there are grants and rebates that are available as well. And I know Beth is going to speak to some of the support that's available for extreme weather preparedness. Andrea is going to speak to some of the programs that the city works in partnership with EnviroCentre on. And they're at the back at the table. I have brought some resources for some of those programs. And like Haran, I will also be around if you have specific questions. The next slide is the last one. So this one, because I think the slides will be shared afterwards, I've just put a couple of the websites on where you can find particular information. We know it's a lot that we're covering right now, but thank you again for the opportunity to join you tonight.
All right. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Haran, for kicking us off. Our next speaker is with Ottawa Hydro. So Ottawa Hydro is one of 3 partner organizations who we've invited tonight. And please welcome Matthew Wilson.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out on such a beautiful weather day. And thanks very much to Councillor Gower for convening us all together. Okay, we will start in a moment. Switch. Well, there are lots of resources available to you, provided by the City of Ottawa. There we go. That's great. So let me, I'm going to talk a lot about the future, but to do that, let me start by going backwards. May 21st, 2022 was a big day in this city. That was the day that the derecho came to town. And it was a day that meteorologists described as one of the most impactful thunderstorms in Canadian history. Winds reached 190 kilometers an hour. It dealt the Hydro Ottawa distribution network a more damaging blow than the 1998 ice storm. Over 400 power poles came down or were in need of repair, and the community of Stittsville was particularly hard hit. It was a massive restoration effort to bring the distribution system back up. We did 4 years worth of normal work in just 14 days. And that derecho was a symptom of climate change. This is the ground that I want to cover with you today. I'm going to give you a general sense of the electrical system from generation, transmission to distribution. I'm going to talk about reliability and outages here in Ward 6. We'll explore a little bit about how Ottawa compares to other world capitals. We'll talk about some of the work that we're doing for the future, and what that will mean for reliability in Ward 6. And I'll end with some common questions and, again, some resources for you to stay connected. So electricity is a feature of modern life, and we often take it for granted. We often think that electricity originates from the switch on the wall when our fingertip flicks it. But of course, in reality, that electricity originates from hundreds of kilometers away. It starts often at a generating station. The first line that you see are the first 2 big parts of the electrical system in the province: generation and transmission. Hydro Ottawa's role kicks in after that. Once the power arrives to the boundaries of the city, we then undertake the task of distributing it. Increasingly, this is an oversimplification, really, of the entire system. But increasingly, in the future, in those bottom 2, by the time it gets to your house or even at your house, we will be having more of that electricity produced and generated on your rooftop, for instance, through solar panels and the like. But let's take a look at where our electricity comes from right now and how it's generated. Under the province's direction, various entities produce the power that we use here in the province. Compared to other jurisdictions, we in Ontario enjoy relatively clean power. We are over 83% of our supply is non-emitting, and that compares very favorably to other jurisdictions. So about half of our power comes from nuclear. About a quarter comes from hydroelectric facilities. About 9% is generated from wind. 2.6% come from other renewables, such as solar. And that last 17% comes from natural gas. So it's generated from natural gas. In the course of the next couple of years, you're going to see the proportion of electricity that's generated from natural gas increase. And that increase is a result of some of the refurbishments of the nuclear fleet that are currently underway, and some additional nuclear work, which has already been announced, but will take a number of years to complete. But once that work is done, the proportion of our electricity that will come from natural gas will diminish over time. Slide. So what is the business of distribution? Well, in a nutshell, it's turning the lights on and keeping them on. But the amount of infrastructure within the boundary of the city of Ottawa to do that is rather substantial. So keep in mind that we're distributing electricity over about 1,100 square kilometers, and that includes 92 substations, about 50,000 poles, about 50,000 transformers, 3,500 kilometers of underground cable, and about 2,800 kilometers of overhead cable. In total, we serve 372,000 customers within the boundary of the red that you can see on the screen. The yellow portions are customers also within the city of Ottawa, but they're served by Hydro One, and there are about 50,000 Hydro One customers within the city. Slide. At the same time, Hydro Ottawa Group and its subsidiary Portage Power is one of Ontario's largest municipally owned producers of renewable power. That is one thing that really sets us apart from other local distribution companies. And it's a source of pride for those in this community. That generation produces 131 megawatts, enough for about 110,000 homes. And the generation that we have at present includes, from the top left, 2 landfill to gas generating stations. At the bottom left, 14 solar generating stations, which are on large municipal buildings, and an additional 18 hydroelectric facilities in Ottawa, Eastern Ontario, and New York State. And if you want to see some of those generating stations, you just need to go to Chaudière Falls on the Ottawa River, where there are 6 stations at that facility alone, including one of the oldest ones in the country, station number 2. So there's a lot of activity going on to make sure that we're producing the power that we need in this community, unlike others. Now let's take a little bit. We'll change to the next slide, and let's look at the issue of reliability. So outages happen, and they happen for a variety of different reasons. And I've listed some of the key reasons here on this slide. Adverse weather. I started by talking about the derecho, and I think that illustrates the point quite clearly. Defective equipment also can be a source of outage. Foreign interference, and that can range from a car crashing into a pole, an animal, or tree contact. Oftentimes there's a lot of those things that occur that are beyond our control. And the fourth big reason is a loss of supply from the provincial grid. So that means that we're not receiving power to distribute to your home, and that as in turn causes an outage. Slide. So let's talk about reliability here in Ward 6. So you're predominantly served by 3 major stations. First 2 are owned by Hydro Ottawa, and they are the Terry Fox Municipal Transformer Station and the Janet King Distribution Station. We have a line to a third station, which is owned by Hydro One at the south, and that's the South March Transformer Station. So when we talk about, particularly for Ward 6, when we talk about a loss of supply from the grid, we're often talking about that station, that Hydro One station. And you're sort of on the front line, as it were, because of the proximity to that station. The interruptions can range from major events to minor incidents. on average, 30% of the outages in Ward 6 in the last 5 years were localized and affected 10 customers or less. And the statistics that I'm going to show you on the next page exclude major events and the minor interruptions affecting 10 or less customers, in keeping with the reporting requirements from the Ontario Energy Board. Slide. So you can see the reliability over the course of the last 5 years on this slide. And you'll notice the 2022 and 2023 certainly stand out. Let me explain that a little bit for you. So 2022, of course, was the derecho. And while it is not included in these stats, there are cascading impacts that arise as a result of outages of that magnitude. And that is the cascading impact is what you see there on the screen. That continued on into 2023 as well. And that was for two reasons. Number one, the cascading impact of the derecho. But number two, it was an unusual year for lightning. In June of 2023, there were triple the number of lightning strikes that we normally experience in the city. They occurred at that time. The reliability trends for 24 and 25 have continued to improve. And I'm going to show you in a moment about the steps we're taking to continue that downward trajectory into the future. But first, I want to pivot for a moment. And I want to talk about the price of electricity and the price of electricity around the world. Slide. So how do the prices we pay here in Ottawa compare to other capital cities? Well, if you lived in, oh, it's a little lighter for you. Sorry, it's darker on my screen. The only city that you could live in among those listed here and pay less for your electricity is Beijing. If you lived in Berlin, you will pay 3 times as much for your electricity as you do here in Ottawa. It's quite a significant number. Slide. Excuse me. Now let's look at it slightly differently. Here we've got 4 main cities: Ottawa, Washington, Singapore, and London. Of course, you'll notice, I'll just show you where the high points are. Just in case you can't see those, I wish they were a little bit more visible. What you notice here is that we consume a tremendous amount of power compared to those other cities. Of course, there's good reason for that. We are among the colder capitals in the world. But it really illustrates how much we are actually consuming here in Ottawa. The darker blue bars on this chart, so that was average annual household consumption. The darker blue bars are what you would pay on an annual basis, and they're all adjusted to Canadian dollars here on this screen. But you'll see that if you lived in Washington, you'd pay a little bit more, and you would use about a quarter less. If you lived in Singapore, you would be paying less, and you'd use about half the power that we consume here in Ottawa. And again, if you lived in London, you'd use about 2/3 less power, and you would be paying more. So I illustrate that just to put it into broader context, into a broader frame about electricity around the world. Slide. Now, let me talk about the future in terms of the next 5 years and what we're planning to do in terms of investments to improve reliability and prepare for the future. So Hydro Ottawa's rate and investment plan is currently with the Ontario Energy Board for its review. So the Energy Board will approve or not the investment plan that we have put forward to it. It's very detailed. There's a tremendous amount of information in it. But the information that's particularly relevant for you for here in Ward 6 are the 4 points that I've included here on the slide. So this is some of what we're doing. First of all, in 2025, we are undertaking a pilot project for remote fault locating devices. So that is a project we're doing in the western region of the city, which includes Ward 6. And those remote fault locating devices help us to see what is happening on the grid better. And it allows us to improve our restoration timelines during interruption. So that is a current plan for this year. We will also be undertaking a renewal of the Janet King distribution station by replacing end-of-life equipment in the next couple of years. The third thing that we'll be doing is an investment in remote operating devices starting in 2026. And that allows us a greater degree of ability to switch the direction of energy, of electrons, thereby again reducing our restoration times during interruptions. And finally, from 2027 onwards, we'll be taking some additional annual projects to improve reliability in the region. Slide. So as I begin to wrap up, what are 3 common questions that we get a lot? I put them on the screen. So is high growth in Stittsville affecting reliability? The short answer is no, it is not. The electrical system and supply demand is forecasted several years out. So even with the electrification of all things from EVs to heat pumps, supply is keeping pace in the near term. Longer term, however, some significant additional investments are needed to meet demand forecasts. Next question we often get is, are electrical vehicles straining the grid? Short answer is no, they are not. In fact, overnight charging is particularly beneficial for the grid because it helps to balance daytime loads and nighttime loads. As of April of this year, there are just over 1,000 EVs registered here in Ward 6. There are 17,000 electric vehicles across the city. I just read on the weekend that electrical vehicles worldwide have displaced about 2 million barrels, the use of about 2 million barrels of oil per day. So electric vehicles are here to stay. They will continue to increase the share of vehicles that we have across the country, and they are not a bad thing. The third question we often get is battery storage a good thing? And the answer is an emphatic yes. Battery storage supports overall energy supply for the city, and it is particularly beneficial because it makes renewable generation, so from wind or solar, more useful at all times of the day. So renewable generation is some of the cheapest type of generation that we can do. It's very, very cost effective to do, and batteries helps make it more useful for a longer period of the day. And as I wrap up on my final slide, of course, I need to remind you to steer clear of a down power line. But I also want to encourage you to stay connected to us. And there are a number of resources available to you to do that. If you want outage alerts, you can sign up for them on my account. They'll come right to your phone or to your email. We have an updated outage map, which will really help give you a sense of restoration timelines and the size and scope of outages. Our website is a tremendous resource for you. If you're thinking about putting in a heat pump, or you're wondering, have questions about an EV, or you have a project that you want to undertake at the house that involves electrical work, start at our website. It's a really, really good resource for you. And of course, if you want to follow our major projects, we have open houses associated with every one of them. So it's easy for you to find out what it is that we're planning to do and to have a sense of how we're trying to build the electrical system for the needs of the future and future generations. I thank you very much for being here and look forward to your questions and a little bit later on.
All right. Thank you very much, Matthew. And don't worry, you don't have to scribble down all the links because we will be sharing these presentations on my website after the fact. Thank you, Matthew. Our next speaker is with the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. The executive director is Sally McIntyre. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. You can go to the first slide. So for those of you who aren't aware, conservation authorities are watershed-based organizations. So our jurisdiction is based not upon municipal boundaries, but areas that drain into a shared water body. So on this map, you can see that Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority has jurisdiction over portions of 3 watersheds. So starting with the Mississippi River, after which we're named, which drains into the Ottawa River, just downstream of Iron Prior. But the water that drains out at that point originates as far west as Charbot Lake or Bon Echo Park, if any of you are familiar with those areas. So it also is responsible for water draining into the Carp River. And Pool Creek here in Stittsville drains into the Carp River, drains into the Ottawa River. So that's another area that we have jurisdiction over, as well as portions draining directly to the Ottawa River, or more or less directly, basically from Fitzroy Harbor down to Shirley's Bay. So that's our jurisdiction. You want to go to the next slide? So our responsibilities are to help work with communities such as, and individuals such as yourselves, to mitigate risks associated with natural hazards within those watershed boundaries. So that includes riverine flooding, you'll start to hear these words again in my presentation, erosion, wetland protection, unstable soils, you think of Leda clay, those sorts of things, and unstable slopes. And to help protect communities and individual landowners from those hazards, we administer a permitting system. So yes, you have to come to us and apply for a permit. But as importantly, we also do flood forecasting and warning. So we have monitors all throughout that jurisdiction that you saw, which is over 4,000 square kilometers. And we're constantly, day in, day out, real-time monitoring the flow and the levels of the water. We're looking at weather forecasts produced from numerous organizations and trying to do predictive analysis to identify what's the risk of a flood event occurring. And then if we think something's going to occur, we notify you. We publish it not only on our website, but we notify the media, we notify the local municipalities, the emergency response organizations of those organizations to get the word out so that people can be prepared. We also, in our jurisdiction, own and operate several dams. So particularly on the Mississippi River, there are several dams. And we also operate on behalf of the province, some structures on the Clyde River, which is a major tributary to the Mississippi River. Now I'm going to note to you, there are no structures on the Carp River or on Pool Creek, aside from road crossings. And road crossings are man-made impediment that de facto acts like a damming of the water. So we also do public awareness and education. Today. And when there's a drought, as there was this summer, and I believe we continue to be in a level 2 or 3 drought, depending on where in our jurisdiction you are, we assemble all the various organizations like the city and emergency responder organizations to discuss about what level drought we're in, how we need to be coordinating our response to that. So we also own several properties because we're a conservation authority. So back in the day, when the acquisition of land and the development of parklands was a priority of the province, we did acquire many properties. And so within our jurisdiction, there's the Carp River Conservation Area, which is actually our most recent acquisition, so to speak, in that it's actually owned by the city, but we manage it as a conservation area for educational purposes. It is just downstream of where we are. If you go to the other side of the highway by Terry Fox Drive, that is the Carp River Conservation Area. Morris Island is another city property that the Conservation Authority manages on behalf of the city. And if you just drive up towards Arnprior near Goleta, it's right on the water. It's beautiful. I recommend everybody in this room should go there. Okay. Similarly, the Milliken Tail, which is just outside of the city limits in Almont, is our flagship site. It's beautiful. Highly recommend it. And then we have these other sites that I won't go into, also equally beautiful. Highly recommended that you should all go for a nice hike there. So last couple of things, source water protection. So this is, where does your drinking water come from if you're hooked to a municipal water supply? And how is that water protected? That's what source water protection is about. And so back in 2009, 2010, the conservation authorities across Ontario worked with the local municipalities to identify the risks, how they could be mitigated, and then developed a plan around that. It is now the responsibility of municipalities to implement those plans, but conservation authorities can and do assist many of those municipalities in the implementation of those plans. And so within our jurisdiction, we have responsibility to support the city for the village of Carp, the town of Almont, and or the community of Almont and the town of Carleton Place. So lastly, stewardship, and you'll hear more about this later, but that's where all of us in this room have a role to play in helping protect ourselves and our communities by the actions we take as individuals and property owners. Next slide, please. Okay, now I'm going to pick up speed. So you've already heard Haran speak about the different types of flooding. So MVCA is responsible for fluvial or riverine type environment flooding. So it's the big image there. It has to do where you have water overflowing from a water system into adjacent lands. This can arise during the spring freshet or other major storm events. Next slide. So this is a freshet. These different colors represent different years. And what this slide is trying to show you is that flooding can occur for any number of reasons based upon what's happening out there. So if you look across the top, it says sun, snow, rain, soil, land use. So you can have very little snowpack as you're entering the freshet season. But if you have the right conditions of whatever snowpack is there, and then you have it all melt at once, concurrent with a boatload of rain, you can have major flooding that you wouldn't have maybe the next year when you have tons of snow on the ground, but it's a nice, slow, steady melt over a period of weeks. And so gradually the snow comes off the land, and this may be your average freshet. So what you're seeing here is the blue was the 2019 flood that took out not only the Ottawa River, but the length of our Mississippi River, as compared to the 2017 flood, which is that light blue, if you're able to see it. Very different type of events. The water came off the land very differently, but they both caused flooding. So this is just to help you to understand that no two springs are the same. There's any number of variables that can impact why a flood might occur. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So here we are. We're within the Carp watershed, and you can see it's one of the smaller watersheds. It's just 300 square kilometers, and the length of the river is roughly 50 kilometers. It's entirely within the city, and it drains out around Fitzroy Harbor. In comparative terms, if you think about the Mississippi River drops roughly 250 meters. That's the height of Niagara Falls, over 200 odd kilometers. It's a big drop. That water is coming. There is no stopping it. The Carp River is a wide, shallow type of meandering kind of wide and shallow type of a watershed. It's largely urban in the upper area and agricultural downstream. And you can see the major tributaries to it, Pool and Feed Mill being closest here in Stittsville. If you want to go to the next slide. So here we are at Pool Creek, and I'll just point out where we are roughly. So This is a map that's available on our website, and I encourage all of you to go check it out, nvc.on.ca. And you can get to this map right on our landing page. And this is just an excerpt of our regulatory mapping. So a lot of the work we're doing is trying to develop this kind of mapping to help inform you as landowners, property owners, of where the risks are and whether or not you need a permit. And whether you need to come to our office and have a conversation with us. Because ideally, that's the first step you do before you do anything within any of those yellow, red areas. So you can see that it's fairly narrow. It widens out around the golf course and in the wetland, not surprisingly. If you go to the next slide, the further downstream you get, the wider the area gets. Because if you think about it, more water is coming in. So, and because it's flat, that water, that area that's flooding is going to get necessarily bigger because it has to accommodate more and more water. So if you look at the scale here, on the previous slide, you could just go back for a sec. I don't have the scale here, but creek here in town. It's not a huge distance, but if you go to the next map again, that's basically a kilometer across when you're getting down to Carp Village. So these are getting into being fairly large areas that need to be regulated for the protection of the people who own that land. You carry on. So one of the things we're doing in partnership with the city as these areas get developed is you have to allow for both the development to be done safely and allow for the natural meandering of the river itself. It has a kinetic energy to it. But there's ways of doing things that help to mitigate the risks and actually absorb that energy and direct it in a productive manner. So the Carp River Conservation Area that I mentioned started off as the Carp River Restoration Project. All this land, and I'm sorry that that's not a great map. Let me explain. The main road that I'm going to point out is Terry Fox near EnviroCentre. So what they did, you may remember pre-development, maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was all farmland. You could drive out here. I've lived here for over 25 years in Stittsville, and that was all farmland, but it was also largely a very man-made drain. They had, over the decades, the centuries literally, what had been a natural creek had been channelized and straightened for the ease of farming. But that has consequences associated with it. And so the desire was to increase the capacity, the storage capacity in that area, as well as to implement measures that would slow the flow, store the flow, etc. So there was realignment of the channel, the creation of riparian zones, so wide areas of plantings, the creation of a habitat pond and wet meadows. And all of these things in detail here that I'll let you read at your leisure help to the system to absorb sudden increases of water, but also to hold flow so that you don't lose it. Because water has a habit of coming and going. And unless you develop something to hold it, often in a natural system, it will go. So if you go to the next slide. So we run several stewardship programs, and I encourage you to check these out on our website. Just very briefly, we have tree planting programs, shoreline planting programs. We can work with school groups and community groups. If you have a project in your community here in Stittsville or beyond that is of interest, please reach out to us. And then the next slide. So my last key messages are to you are to first off inform yourself. If you own property in Stittsville or further afield, because maybe you don't have property in MVCA's watershed, maybe you have waterfront property in Rideau Valley Conservation Area, Authorities area. So check them out. And if you have a cottage further afield, go on the Conservation Ontario website and look to see what conservation authority jurisdiction you live in. Go visit their site and see, do you own property in a regulated area? That's number one. So if you are have regulated areas of your property, please call that conservation authority before you start to do work. Because what we've found over the years is that sometimes you call a consultant first who will tell you you need all sorts of studies and you can do all sorts of things. And that might not be true. So we just advise you to please call us first and we will help guide you. And therefore you can be in a better position to engage with your consultant in those conversations. We also ask that you sign up for our flood forecasting warning notifications. You can get it right on your phone, just like Hydro indicated. We have a similar system. So if you want to be notified of a potential flood event, just sign up. It's easy enough to do right on our website. Last slide. So take action on your own property because we all have a role in mitigating the risk to ourselves. I was flooded in 2009. I lost trees in the dress show. I've seen it all as a fellow resident of Stittsville. So, and I'm taking action. So check your eaves troughs, downspouts, and your site grading. You need to make sure they're draining well away from your house and away from your house in terms of the grading. Check your sump pump. I had that go down on me too. You know how you just pull out the plug to just do something and then you forget to put it back in? Yeah. Okay. Maintain or increase opportunities for water infiltration. So I've created a bog on my lot here in Stittsville where my downspouts drain to, and it naturally infiltrates. Maintain or increase robust vegetation planting. So I have lots of shrubbery for the, had to get that in there. So anyway, you know, you want things that absorb water and do so without posing additional risk to your property. So you have to think about what you're planting, why you're planting it, where you're planting it. Properly store hazardous materials. So I don't know about you guys, but I had a shed that flooded. It had gasoline, it had various hazardous materials in it. You need to make sure that they're stored safely and properly because when a flood comes, it's indiscriminate. Install and maintain rain barrels. I have 5 of them. You have to maintain them properly and stuff, but we had a drought this summer. Had the city imposed a water restriction, you may have only been able to use the water from your rain barrels. Check and understand your insurance coverage. It's changed so much in the past 10 years. You need to inspect word for word what your insurance policy says and speak to your adjuster to understand what it means. And then inquire of our stewardship programs, because maybe we can help you do some of these things. We run citizen science programs if you're interested in becoming more involved on the ground. And if you notice system blockages, et cetera, call 311. Don't try to do it yourself if it's on public property, because maybe you're adjusting something you shouldn't. So that's my final message.
All right. Thank you, Sally. And if you have yet to explore some of the pathways along the Carp River here in Stittsville and Canada, they are a hidden treasure, I think, in our communities, and a good reminder about the important role they play as well. Our next speaker is from EnviroCentre. Please welcome Andrea Flowers.
Hi, thank you. So nice to be part of a panel that's got such big picture things that they're going through. I'm going to get into some of the really practical things. If you can go to the next slide, thanks. If you haven't heard of EnviroCentre, we've been around for more than 25 years. We started in 1999, and we focus on practical solutions to address climate change. We work largely in areas of climate mitigation, so we're reducing emissions, but some of the work we do also has significant co-benefits to help us build resiliency to the changes that we already see and the more severe changes that we know are coming with climate change. Next slide. We work in 4 different areas. The first is in home energy efficiency. The second is sustainable transportation, then green infrastructure, and then waste and the circular economy. The timer on, because I was trying to stay within the time limit tonight. Next slide, please. Oh, you can stay there. That's great. So with our green infrastructure projects, we really are looking to accomplish several different things. We've heard a lot about flood mitigation tonight. So flood mitigation projects and the projects I'll speak to help us soak up stormwater runoff. They help reduce flood risks, particularly during storm surges. During droughts, some of the projects that we have helped recharge aquifers, store rainwater, and hold moisture during those droughts. Street and home cooling is important because the shade lowers our street temperatures and our home temperatures. It reduces the heat stress on our homes, and it helps reduce the urban heat island effect. Air filtration, we've had lots of issues with wildfire smoke, and so trees and plants help absorb the harmful air pollution and improve our air quality. And finally, we build strength through diversity when we have robust and resilient ecosystems, because that helps us protect against pest, disease, and other types of climate stress. Next slide. These are a couple of different resiliency programs that we offer. Tiny forests, Plant Your Place, Rain Ready Ottawa, and a range of home energy retrofit solutions. Next slide. Tiny forests. Has anyone heard of a tiny forest? Oh, good. If you haven't heard of a tiny forest, they are fast-growing, dense little forests. They tend to be about the size of a tennis court, 200 meters squared or so, and they are planted extremely densely. Maybe 200 trees, 200 shrubs, and 200 little baby plants called forbs. And that really mimics the canopy, mid-level, and ground level of a natural forest system. The tiny forests that we plant use something called the Miyawaki method, which is a way to improve the soil, often by excavating or really loosening it if it's been densely packed, and then enriching it with a range of soil amendments, from things like compost right down to introducing microbial additions into the soil, which helps to establish a solid and strong foundation for the plants themselves. The Miyawaki method has been shown to support forest growth such that you see mature forests that would normally take about 100 years in only 10 to 20. So it's showing to be a fast way to regenerate areas which have been destroyed or have suffered removal of large areas of land. Next slide, please. So in Ottawa, we planted 7 tiny forests this fall, and we've planted a total of 14. We planted them in a variety of different schools, at a Rotary home, at a senior citizens residence, and at some affordable housing providers. These are some of the benefits that we see with tiny forests, including flood mitigation, drought defense, street and home cooling, air filtration, and diversity. I think we had between 35 and 50 different species planted at each of the forests that we planted this fall. Next slide. Plant Your Place. Has anyone taken advantage of Plant Your Place? No? Oh, Councillor Gower. Thank you. Plant Your Place is a program that was launched in 2025 by the City of Ottawa, and it's a free program that helps residents plant trees on their own private property. That's important because about 40% of land in Ottawa is private property, and Stittsville has a low canopy cover. It's less than 20% here in Stittsville. I think it's around 17 or 19%, depending on 2017 or 2022 numbers. And that means that we need to regenerate the canopy here. So in 2025, we distributed 1,200 trees through the distribution program where residents could come and pick up their tree. These were big trees, guys. Some of them wouldn't fit in the room. Not all, but some of them were really tall. There were some very creative ways to get those trees into people's cars. We also planted an additional 50 trees at affordable housing providers in some of the city's areas that have the very lowest. There's 8 different areas in the city that have been identified under a tree equity analysis, and we planted 50 trees in those areas where we had someone come to the location and choose the right tree for the right place. Next year, stay tuned because we're going to double in size. So Councillor Gower will make sure to tell everyone where you can get your free tree. The benefits for Plant Your Place include flood mitigation, street and home cooling, air filtration, and increased diversity. And you can also check out the website Plant Your Place if you want more information when that opens, probably in early March. Next slide. Rain Ready Ottawa. Rain Ready Ottawa is also a City of Ottawa program that supports residents to manage stormwater where it falls on their private property. There's a range of information available online you can learn yourself. Sally gave some great tips on her Take Action. You can also do e-learning courses. There are 4 different e-learning courses that are available online to teach you how to manage that rainwater on your own property. The courses that we currently have are Stormwater Introduction and the Rain Ready Overview, Downspout Redirection, Rain Garden Installation, and Soak Away Pits and Trenches. And we installed 3 different rain gardens around the city this year. If you happen to live east of Eagleson, then you are in one of the stormwater retrofit areas and you may be eligible for rebates up to $5,000. Next slide, please. Benefits of Rain Ready include flood mitigation, drought defense, and street and home cooling. Next slide, please. Our website was on the bottom and those slides will be circulated with the websites as well. And then last but not least, we offer a range of energy retrofit programs. That's the timer, I'm out of time. We offer energy retrofit programs in a number of different ways. All of these energy retrofit solutions help include air sealing and insulation benefits. And when you include insulation or when you improve your insulation and air sealing, you start to improve the envelope of your building. When you do that, you are making yourself more resilient to extreme weather changes, heat and cold, and you're reducing the amount of filtration that's coming through your house. So you're protecting yourself more against risks like a wildfire smoke. The energy affordability programs provide support to income eligible electricity consumers and includes a wide range of upgrades, everything from refrigerators, air conditioners, heat pumps, power strips, weather stripping, smart thermostats, and all the expert advice and energy saving upgrades under this program are completely free of charge. I encourage you to go to the website on the next page to see whether or not you're eligible. EnviroCentre also administers the Home Winterproofing Program, which is funded by Enbridge. And we can help you lower your natural gas bill and make your home more comfortable through the same kinds of measures, including wall, attic, and basement insulation, which can help control moisture and eliminate drafts. And then, of course, more air sealing so that the air you're paying to heat isn't just escaping. We have a retrofit accelerator program, which offers free technical and financial advice to housing providers. We just had the data released today on one of our flagship retrofits, a place called Carver Place. We had more than an 85% reduction in energy costs and more than a 90% reduction in GHG emissions through that one project alone. And then last but not least, we offer the Better Homes Ottawa Loan Program. This is a City of Ottawa program that offers low interest 20-year loans up to $125,000 or 10% of the value of your home to cover the cost of home energy improvements. Eligible measures include a range of thermal envelope upgrades, mechanical systems, renewable energy, EV chargers, and the addition of a rental suite. It also includes a number of resiliency measures, including backflow prevention valves, sump pumps, basement waterproofing, permeable pavement, and tree planting. Next slide. So we can improve the efficient heating and cooling and air filtration. And then at the bottom, there are 2 links to access any of those projects there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea, for telling us about EnviroCentre, a really, really important partner organization for the city. And there's a lot of other things they do as well, which a little bit outside of the scope. One of my favorite is Let's Bike Month, which happens every year in June. And I recognize a few of our Let's Bike team here in Stittsville, but watch for that. I'll be promoting that in the spring. And our 5th and final presenter tonight is from the City of Ottawa Emergency Management Group. Please welcome Beth Gooding.
Hi, everyone. So thank you. I'm Beth from the city's Office of Emergency Management, and it's always hard to go last, but I only have 3 or 4 slides, and I'll be covering a couple of topics that we haven't already discussed. So let's just jump into the first one. I want to talk a little bit about property insurance. It's a really good example of an economic impact that many of us are facing as a result of climate change. If you look at the chart there, you can see that the number of catastrophic events in Canada is increasing every year. And what that means is that the cost of our insurance policies are also increasing. The way the insurance industry works is that the premiums paid by the many cover the claims filed by the few. But as you can see here, the claims that are being filed are more and more with time. And so the only way the industry can survive is by increasing the cost of our insurance policies. Next slide. So I know that you've had a lot of information tonight, but I definitely encourage you to look at the Insurance Bureau of Canada's website. They have a lot of great information, and I'll just highlight a couple of really important points. The first is that most standard home insurance policies are not sufficient because they don't cover overland flooding and sewer backup. These are add-ons, and so something for you to consider. The other thing I always want to highlight is for renters and tenants. It's a myth that your landlord's insurance will cover your losses. It won't. Your landlord's insurance are really meant to cover building structure issues. And we see this time and again whenever there's a flooding event, particularly for renters or tenants who live in basement apartments. If they don't have insurance and they experience damage to their belongings, they're going to have to replace them on their own. And that includes living expenses. So if they're no longer able to live in their basement apartment, if they don't have insurance, again, they're covering their living expenses on their own. So something that we encourage all renters and tenants to consider. So it's really important from an insurance perspective to know your risks, talk to your broker about your coverage, and apply some of the home hardening as appropriate that was discussed earlier by other presenters. Next slide. I also want to talk a little bit about personal or household preparedness. I know you've heard this before, but it's really important if you can to try to be self-sufficient for at least 3 days. And I can definitely share an example from the Durate Show, and Councillor Gower has heard me say this many times, but the night of the Durate Show, every single fire truck in the city of Ottawa was out helping residents on emergency calls. The city of Ottawa is always going to respond to people in need, including through our emergency services. But if you can be self-sufficient and not need support in the very early stages of emergency, it helps assure the city that we reach the people who really need that support. I also want to market our new public emergency notification system. So that is Ottawa Alert, and we launched it in May 2025. And it's a subscription-based service. You can download the app, or if you don't like apps, you can go to ottawa.ca and sign up for email, text, or even voice messages. And what we're using it for is after an emergency, we want to use it to communicate guidance and important information to residents. And the best example I can give is this past winter. In February, we got, within the course of a week, a crazy amount of snow. And I don't know if you remember, but in the city of Ottawa, we started to get an uptick in calls to our Ottawa Fire Services related to potential carbon monoxide poisoning, which is really dangerous. And it was because the snow drifts were so high that they were blocking vents. So if we had had our public emergency notification system in place in February, that would be the message that we'd be sending to residents is please go out and make sure that your vents are clear. So like I said, it came into effect in May, unfortunately, a little bit later, but we have it now, and we're going to be using it every time there's an emergency to communicate important information to you. Next slide. So this is my final slide. So I told you I was going to be fast, but I want to end on a hopeful and positive note, because I can tell you I've been through many emergencies, and studies have proven this over and over. The neighborhoods and the communities that recover and do the best are the ones that work together to help each other. This is a really important concept. The city of Ottawa is always going to be there to help people in need. We'll open emergency reception centers, we'll mobilize emergency social services, including emergency food where required. But what we see time and again is that some of the most important supports after emergency comes from neighbors. And it doesn't have to be grand gestures. I can give you again some examples from the derecho, including some that happened in Stittsville. You can knock on your neighbors' doors, especially those who may be living alone, and see if they need any assistance. If you have a generator and you're able to make a hot cup of coffee, you can offer it to your neighbor who may really need it. You can clear your debris from your neighbor's back or front lawn. That's another important thing. And what we saw in Stittsville is people who had access to things like the Legion, for example. They opened the Legion doors and allowed people to come in. So these are just small, important gestures. I can also share that I worked with someone, and I think this is such an important story, but I worked with someone who during that February snowstorm, they had some newcomers to Canada in their neighborhood on their street, and they could see that they were overwhelmed. They just weren't used to that level of snow. So I thought it was really nice. All the neighbors got together and cleared their driveway and their sidewalks for them, which I thought was such a nice gesture and such a small thing that you can do to be helpful, you know? So I want to leave you on that positive note that the city is here to help. We're always going to be here to help. But we want to work with you and mobilize as many neighbors helping neighbors as possible so that we recover and we're resilient together.
All right, thank you, Beth. So that brings our presentation part of the evening to an end. If you'll give us just a moment to reset, I'm going to ask all of the panelists to come up to the front, and we're going to get our microphones set up here as well. So give us just a moment. Check, check. Check, check. So originally I had some preset questions, but I think in the interest of time, we're going to go right to questions from the audience. We'd like to get as many in as possible. So I have my staff with the microphone. So if you do have a question, please put up your hand and Catherine will come and find you. To get as many questions in as we can, we'll ask that you keep your questions as short as possible. One question per person, and you can direct it to a specific person on the panel, or if you just want to ask generally, that's okay too. And I'll remind you who's on our panel, and you can maybe wave as from the Climate Change Unit, the City of Ottawa, we have Julia and Hiran. From Ottawa Hydro, Matthew. From Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, Sally. From EnviroCentre, Andrea. And from Emergency Management, Beth. All right. So if anyone has a question, you can put your hand up. Super.
Hi. First of all, EnviroCentre, I've never heard of you. Absolutely love you. I'm a first generation young farmer, and we're rehabilitating our farm naturally. So thank you. I have a little bit of some background that I wanted to get into quickly, just because it's going to put context into the question. So I think it's going to go mostly to Hydro Ottawa and maybe you, Glenn. So I'm a resident of Stittsville for 28 years of my life, and now I've migrated to Dunrobin, but I'm kind of here with my fellow neighbors now. So in this area, what I've learned and followed from these people, as well as Hydro Ottawa and your newspaper releases and everything, is that it's not a lack of hydro, it's the hungry squirrels and a few of Stittsville's worst drivers. It's kind of what I've summarized. So yet somehow our rural community has become a testing ground for so-called green energy initiatives that have shown us what the city of Ottawa will do when these projects come to your doorstep. On January 8th, 2025, unannounced surveyors appeared on our farm in broad daylight. Had we not looked out our window that day, we might have never known about the proposal for one of Canada's 5th largest battery energy storage facilities. Over 10 acres, 250 shipping containers of flammable lithium-ion batteries, planned on rural residential land, on farmland, over our water table and beside a provincially significant wetland with 9 at-risk species. Since then, our community of Dunrobin has faced intimidation and manipulation. Door knocking, we've heard our seniors have had $5 gift cards given to them when the proponent speaks to them. The unauthorized use of Ottawa fire symbol on their marketing pieces to get buy-in to safety and project, and even attempts to discredit local businesses offering free coffee for petition signatures. The proponent admitted to local papers that disbarred engineers presented project information. The city knows all of this, and nothing has been done. They've admitted that they don't verify credentials of professionals submitting site plans. Councillors have openly said they vote yes on projects regardless of merit or placement because they're afraid of the province. Despite us submitting Ottawa's 3rd largest site petition in a decade opposing this project, the city still voted yes to provide municipal support. The so-called voice of the people, they ignored to do anything for every concern raised. Over the last 11 months, neither the city nor the proponent has explained how 250 shipping containers of lithium batteries would benefit our specific community. A nearby solar project on the same hydro line told us outright that this energy is destined for Southern Ontario, not us. Meanwhile, reports like Parker Goliath showed one example that on October 6th and 7th, taxpayers paid nearly $20 million to private proponents to generate renewable energy and storage solutions. Of that, 72% was sold off to Quebec and the US. To note, much of that was sold at a loss. I'm no longer a Stittsville resident, but I'm here to warn you as a neighbor. I'm about responsible stewardship of energy. I believe that green energy initiatives need to be done with innovation and not do harm to produce or cite. I'm a resident raising the flag and stating that the city has no policies on wind turbines. They could appear in any field near you. And we have been told that no city plan that we know of have experience with battery energy storage facilities. They simply take the proponents' words by hundreds, while hundreds of millions of dollars hang in the balance for these mega companies. Our specific company we're dealing with is Mark Carney's Brookfield. How do you say no to that? The way the city is handling these projects, we are learning we have very little protection. While green energy can be placed correctly, the fact that the city does not stand up to stop these projects when residents raise the flag saying this is not the right place is concerning. I want everybody to know Glenn Gore was one of those votes who ignored residents of West Carleton most impacted by the project. You stood up and said no. So here's my question. Where is the proof that Ontario is lacking energy when we're exporting it to US and other provinces? And why are rural companies the ones whose biggest problems are squirrels and bad drivers being forced to shoulder the risk just to line the pockets of officials and their friends?
Okay, thanks for your question. I'm going to ask if anyone on the panel wants to address any of that. I know in your presentation, you did mention the battery energy storage systems. Anything you want to add or respond?
The project you're describing was not led by Hydro Ottawa. I will answer your question. The project that you're talking about is not a Hydro Ottawa project. We did write to the city to give some broader context about battery storage and what it means to the system of electricity within the city and within the province, and its general significance for to make renewables easier to use and more useful at all times of the day. We know that electrical demand is increasing. We know that it will double by 2050. We know that the electrification of all things, from heating used with heat pumps or with cars, is a primary solution to lowering our carbon emissions. We have to be able to meet that need, or we will have communities that live without, or that will not be able to prosper, or that will be cold, or that won't be able to move around. So I encourage you to think in broad terms about what alternatives you would imagine to be better for you and better for the environment and better for how we get energy in this country. And that has to include all of the options that are available to us.
I think we looked at the lithium mine, for one, they do huge damage to the as well as there's no recycling, there's not a lot of recycling. They ship all these batteries over to India and China for recycling. And then also there is no noted documentation around slave labor around these batteries. So if you do have to pick the technology, it has to be right. It has to be the right composition that's not being in debt to someone just so we can talk.
Thank you for your question. I just want to make sure we get to as many as possible. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you to all the panelists. My question is for Haran. Is there a way that residents can see whether their house is at risk and is maybe connected to a combined storm sewer, or if is there a way to check within your home if you already have some sort of backflow preventer installed there?
Excellent question. Thank you. Maybe I'll take the easy part. There's no combined sewers in Stittsville. We have a couple of different system types. There are fully separated before the era of dual drainage. There's fully separated before the era of dual drainage, where the city has done retrofits of the area. There's massive, I don't know, massive is the right word. Maybe that's a relative term. There's a lot of flooding in Stittsville in 2009. And the city did a lot of improvements in the overland flow system and inlet control devices, pipe upgrades, and sorry, I'm losing the thread of your question. Okay, no, the important part is that for those people who aren't used to looking in their basement and trying to find whether you have a backwater valve or a sump pump, some pumps might be easier. I always start in my home with my professional, so I'll call the plumber. The plumber should be able to put, before I bought my house, I had a plumbing inspection done at the same time as a home inspection. the plumber can come with a camera. They could put a camera in the basement cleanouts, and you could not only know whether you have a backwater valve, the plumber can determine whether the foundation drain is connected to the sanitary lateral, whether there's any sumps or imperfections in the piping underneath your floor slab. And then you'll have a pretty good starting sense anyways, of what you have down there. It's always good to get that camera inspection. You could get this shows you how long ago I bought a house. It was on DVD, but I'm sure you could get it in a modern format. You could see the videos yourself as well. And then the plumber could give you advice on what to do. You might have a backwater valve. Maybe it needs to be cleaned. Maybe it's too old. It needs to be replaced. Maybe you don't have a backwater valve. But you could always, if there's questions about the system, because the way your house is protected is a combination of the city system and what's in your home. And if there's questions like, well, Brand, do I have an inlet control devices? What is that thing you mentioned in that meeting? Please contact us.
Hey, thank you so much for organizing this, Councillor Gower. My question is probably for Julia. I love the mitigation plan, and I'm surprised and encouraged because the future looks pretty daunting. So it's nice to know that some people are thinking ahead. So my question is, we already have a City of Ottawa Better Homes to help retrofits, but we see, especially in Stittsville, just a load of new communities sprouting up overnight being built. Is there any way we can start at that level with perhaps imposing or getting our builders to incorporate already the heat pumps, the solar panels, start thinking about geothermal? Why are we thinking we're going to correct it afterwards?
So it's a great, I think we need to be thinking about solutions from all perspectives. So thank you for thinking about it from the, what do we do for homes that are already there? But I think the question around how do we influence our planning of new subdivisions, of new areas? The way that the city does it, and I'm guessing you're probably pretty familiar with this, is we have our official plan policies. And those are policies that we've been working on over years to make sure we are doing all that is within the influence on the role of the city to be able to encouraging the best design possible for those plans. In the last round, when we were doing the official plan policies review, we made sure that there were policies in there for the resiliency side to make sure we were encouraging all of that. In terms of requirements for what's happening within a home, that is, and I will look to others if they want to jump in, that's outside of what the city is responsible for. So again, we are always looking at opportunities to be in dialogue where there's building code or other types of regulations to share it from the city's perspective. And I would encourage you also to be sharing your perspective as a homeowner, but I'll see if anyone else wants to add in. But that I think is, we look at where we can put our policies from an official plan perspective, from our development review process, and wherever we can, we are encouraging that those are being put in place. But we can't require it.
I have something to add too. I don't know if any, and put your hand up if you have a question, because Catherine will find you. The city was hoping the province would strengthen some of the building codes to make it more of a requirement to have more energy efficient homes. Unfortunately, they've gone the other direction, and they've actually not only strengthened the requirements, they've not only not strengthened the requirements, they've explicitly prevented cities from creating our own set of requirements. And I would imagine it's a lot less expensive to do something up front than it is to do retrofit programs later. And Andrea may know this, but the percentage of emissions in a city that comes from homes, I think is about the same that comes from vehicles, approximately. Is that?
Is what's, I think it's that, or the.
Okay.
But building, not necessarily just homes, but buildings and transportation.
So buildings are incredibly impactful when it comes to emissions, and there's not a lot of a plan right now in our province around new homes. So thank you for raising that. Over here.
Question. I'm actually from Canada, But I'm very much interested in this whole issue. I've done, for my community, I've done a lot of emergency preparedness. So we have we've gone to every single house, and they either have like a grab and go or a stay in place. So we're all set, and we have regular get-togethers and so on. So I think that needs to be done elsewhere. That's a very positive thing. So now my concern is, so I'm very much into the environment. And so in Canada, we have this intensification. So there's a lot of buildings that are going up because of the transit and the O train, which is supposedly supposed to come out to here, et cetera. Okay, so I've been looking at the zoning, the draft zoning bylaw, and building setback. So there's no space for trees or whatever, which are important, as you've mentioned, for, you know, absorbing rainwater, for providing shade for people, and so on and so forth. So I've been after the planning department. So I got in touch with Councillor Curry, who put me in touch with the planning department. I've mentioned, you know, the importance, like the official plan, how it says, you know, you've got a climate plan in place, and that's why you have all your different organizations. And I'm quite familiar with what you promote, but the planning department, and they're just going ahead with what they plan. Is there any way to have them reconsider what they're doing? Because there's no point, like retrofitting costs a huge amount of money. If you plan ahead so that you've got the space for trees and you've got the space for, you know, shrubbery and so on to absorb rainwater, then you won't have these problems down the road. So,
Thank you.
So yeah, a way to, is there a way that you can talk, a way that there's some communication?
I'll start and then I will pass it on, whoever would like to weigh in. I hear you on the frustration and the sense that the different departments aren't dealing with each other, or you hear something from one department and another. I can say I'm not the planning department, but I will say that when we were developing Climate Ready Ottawa, we really took an all department approach to try and understand how is climate change going to be impacting every single service that's provided by the city. What are we already doing? What's within our jurisdiction or not within our jurisdiction? And then to really look at where those opportunities are. And maybe a frustrating answer, but I will say that everyone on this panel is looking for ways to break down those silos and to work together to achieve those goals that we know are shared, like to integrate it across. Is it a perfect system? No. I'm wondering if Haran wants to speak to some of the positive examples that's happening from an intensification perspective, from the water perspective, because I think through the work of the infrastructure master plan, that's an example where some of those tensions between there's not enough space for everything, basically, where's the water going to flow, where are the trees going to go, all of these things that we know we have really important density goals and intensification goals for broader sustainability and livability. But they are very real challenges in terms to balance that. So I don't know, Haran, if you want to speak to some of the
intensification, if you were talking to the planning department, I'm assuming the type of intensification that you were seeing might have been through a planning act application like site plan control. And I believe we have tree protection and preservation bylaws, and so I'm also not from the planning department, so I can't speak directly about particular files on issues of trees. There are other ways that intensification happens. One is through severances, things that go through the Committee of Adjustment. The Committee of Adjustment is an arm's length body from the City of Ottawa. So city planners and our tree specialists go and I guess make our case at the Committee of Adjustment, but that's an arm's length body, so we don't really have control over those decisions. I think, Julia, what you're referring to is there's also low-rise residential intensification. I'm not sure if that's what you had in mind.
Yeah. Well, maybe one of our next meetings like this will be around tree strategy because it is really important. We touched a little bit on it, but that's maybe that'll be our next forum that we do. Thank you for raising it. Yeah. I think we could probably squeeze in one and maybe two questions.
Neville Hunt with the Community Voice newspaper here in Stittsville. Question for our hydro guy. Is Hydro Ottawa in favor of power generation from incinerating garbage? And if so, or if Ottawa had such a thing, would Hydro Ottawa operate that?
It's a good question. I don't want to speculate on the answer related to that. Certainly other communities, Durham region, York region have a combined that municipality, those two regional municipalities operate one large incineration project in near Toronto. And it does generate power, but I don't want to speculate on the answer to that question. Just don't know.
One more question? Yeah.
Thank you very much for giving us this time. I'm so old that I actually still read the print media. And certainly, according to the Globe, it's awfully hard in Ontario to get your hands on up-to-date floodplain plans. What is the status of that for the Ottawa area?
So at MVCA, our goal is to update our floodplain mapping every 10 years. But that's funding dependent. So the funding for the floodplain mapping, it largely comes from the federal government and the municipalities we serve. The province channels the money to us, but it doesn't actually give us any additional money. So when you think of our jurisdiction, we're largely rural, small municipalities up to, as I said, North Frontenac, Addington Highlands. These are some of the least populated areas of Southern Ontario. So they don't have a lot of assessment value to contribute to floodplain mapping. And we have no floodplain mapping for those areas. City of Ottawa, on the other hand, has been very generous. And we have had multiple agreements with them to develop floodplain mapping in this region and to update that floodplain mapping as this community has grown and evolved. So when you look across Ontario, it's going to be really dependent upon the level of investment that individual municipalities have made or are able to make in developing that floodplain mapping, and on the federal programs that their local conservation authorities, if they have a conservation authority, has been able to access to support that work. So in recent years, the federal government has run a program that has been tremendously instrumental to our authority in updating and giving us mapping in areas that had previously never been mapped, and to update mapping in other areas where we had mapped, but not for over 20 years. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you for the question. Okay, we'll do two more quick questions. If you can make it quick, we would appreciate it.
Okay, so this is going to be a quick question. I don't know which which person out of the panels that this will actually be a question towards, but I just want to ask a question out of the general transportation use. I don't know if this is for climate adaptation, but I'm sure it will help with embracing for climate change and our residents to. It will help our residents for getting around the city a lot better. And that is the timing issue. I think we all know that our transportation system has been quite bumpy in terms of the timing on when it comes to our stations. Is the City of Ottawa doing anything to work on that kind of aspect in terms of the transportation?
like as an OC Transpo?
Yes.
Well, maybe I'll ask, where does transportation fit into the overall climate strategy? And I can talk really quickly about OC. If anyone...
I think, so if you think back to one of that first slide that I opened with, that was talking about the overall climate change master plan, and I'm sorry, I think I'm right behind the post for you.
Oh.
Absolutely. And as was mentioned earlier, in terms of our emissions, it plays a huge role. In terms of the link to resiliency and adaptation, the angle that we come at thinking about it is, how do we make sure that transportation systems, and specifically our buses and our trains, are still able to operate during extreme weather events and in terms of changing climate conditions. So one of the things we've done working with OC Transpo with Climate Ready Ottawa is to look at where they are already making sure that we're ready for those events. I'll give you an example. For the electric buses, we're making sure that there's a redundant power supply so that those buses will be able to still be charged in an extent of a major power outage. I know it's not specifically your question you're having, but I wanted to sort of talk a little bit about the broader picture. We're also working with our transportation planners, as well as with OC Transpo, to think about where could our transportation routes be at risk from flooding, for example. So again, the thinking is we need to keep our services running in all of those future climate conditions. The other piece, of course, is how it fits in our different transportation plans and what we're supporting for reducing our emissions. And some of the other panelists spoke to that as well. So it is very much part of the overall climate change plan. In terms of the challenge that you raised about reliability and times, that is not something that our group works specifically with, but of course is a concern to everyone in terms of having a robust and strong transit system. So, you want to add anything?
Thank you, Julia. Well, I'll add, in terms of overall reliability, in a big picture, the city is building light rail, and stage 2 to the east end is opening in the next couple months, let's say. To the west end, we're looking at early 2027, so a year to 18 months away. Through our new transportation master plan, there's also some transit corridors intended to add some dedicated bus lanes, for example, on Baseline, which is a very busy corridor. In the short term, the issue that's causing a lot of lateness with buses and reliability is a shortage of buses due to delivery issues, a supply chain issue that's been affecting North America. That's starting to be resolved. So between the new lines of the train launching and the new buses arriving, hopefully in the next few months, we'll see that improve significantly. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, last question. Yes.
Hi, thanks very much.
You're good.
Okay, thanks very much to Councillor Gower for convening this very informative conversation with your panelists. This is actually to you, Councillor Gower, but it's arising from everything about with the panelists, because we recognize, as you as an elected official and having served as one in the past, how challenging it is to actually change policies when you're one voice. But the question here is, we have a provincial government that is actually destabilizing municipalities, removing tools within your toolbox to develop a resilient community. So when we talk about nature-based solutions, specifically on my perspective, it's looking at wetlands. Ottawa and Eastern Ontario have seen the highest rate of wetland loss in the last 20 years. It's actually over 9,000 hectares. And for perspective, that's over 1,000 Parliament Hills. So when I look at the challenges faced by conservation authorities with a proposal to take 36 down to 7, and the work that our conservation authority, just Mississippi, is doing alone. So my question to you is actually one for you to give to us. And that is, how can we help you advance climate mitigation and adaptation and community resiliency here in Ottawa by communicating to provincial officials? So what do we need to do to be able to help you strengthen our collective voices? What can we do?
Well, thanks for the question. First of all, thank you to everyone for attending tonight, because this is step one, right? Getting informed. That's the first step towards getting engaged. I think there's a number of organizations outside of the city Groups like Janet, you've been involved in launching Friends of Stittsville Wetlands as an advocacy group to help share information and get people more involved. So I would definitely encourage people to get involved with organizations like that. Ecology Ottawa is another Ottawa organization. Ottawa Cafes is another Ottawa organization that is focused on these things. So participating in those, following those groups on social media or newsletters, taking opportunities when there are issues, when there's opportunities to provide feedback, right to your counselor, right to your MPP, right to your MP. We get a lot often when someone's opposed to something, but not always the other way. So it's important on issues, if there's something you support and you want to see more of, respond in a positive way and let them know about that as well. That's really important. I think with the province, sometimes it does feel like an uphill battle, that there's a lot of things the province controls and we're trying to push back. So I think meetings like these, I think, are really important to let you know what we're doing and try to remind people about what Beth mentioned at the end, which is about that community resiliency and working together as a community to move projects forward and support one another. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but if you have concerns, please do write to your elected officials. It really does make a difference. And I think sometimes the reason we don't see more at the provincial level is because they aren't hearing directly. There's a lot of form letters that go around, a lot of advocacy groups, but I find the provincial government really responds when they hear directly from real residents and real voters. That's when you can get their attention. Yeah. We're going to wrap up, and I want to ask my panelists very, very quickly in 1 or 2 sentences. We covered a lot tonight. There's a lot of information. If there's one thing that you really hope people will take away about what you shared at the meeting here tonight, and I'll just go down starting with Sally. On the spot.
Well, it's on all of us to keep ourselves informed. And it's also on that last point on all of us to let our elected officials know where we stand. And on those 2 points, I think there's a role for everybody in the room to take something away and do something.
Each of us on the panel are representing the interests of our organizations and speaking for our organizations, but it all has to come together with what we do and with what we as a community do. And again, as we taking the lead from our elected officials, you know, we're no person is an island. We're a community. We have really good, smart people in this community trying to do the right thing and advance. We have big challenges ahead of us, and I think we've got to work together if we're gonna deal with the challenges that lie ahead. And the last thing I would say is, if you haven't insulated your home, insulate your home.
Okay, those were great, inspiring answers. So here's a uninspiring answer, but I think it's just as important. I'll give you the answer and then I'll give you the reason. If you're having a problem or noticing a problem with flooding or water, call 311. Now, I'll tell you the reason. When we have a system of systems, we have our drainage and sanitary systems were built at different times by different former municipalities, by different land developers, and they're all put together and they work. And we have computer modeling of them, we have GIS data, we have all sorts of things, but we cannot know everything. And so every time we hear something, it either confirms what we already know, or it may send us down a different path. And that's the way that we could be proactive about flooding at the city of Ottawa. So it's very, very important. When you have flooded, it's probably the last thing you want to do is help me. But my goal, my job is a long-term job. It takes a long time to improve communities. And when we don't have information, we're kind of sleeping if we don't know. Now, we may already know. I have a lot of information about Stittsville, and but you don't know. In 2004, there's a hurricane. I lived in a different part of Ottawa, and a little bit of water came into my basement. I had no thought. I grew up in Northern Ontario in a rural area. I had no concept of calling the city just to tell them something happened. And then I joined the city in 2014, and then I realized, oh, these people need this information so they could help improve the system.
There's lots of programs out there. Pick your problem, find a solution and a program that helps you fix it. You don't have to do it all at once. Start with the one which is real for you now. Ask other people about it, do it yourself, and then go on to the next one at a time.
The U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, used to have this great campaign called "You Are the Help Until Help Arrives." You are the help until help arrives. So think about that in the context of your own preparedness and how you may, if you're able, help your neighbors.
Great, I get to be last. I would say that the theme here is about preparedness, and preparedness for me is around proactive action. So the city's doing our bit to try and think ahead and do what we can proactively. And to echo what others have said, each of you can also take those individual steps to prepare before it happens, because we know it's going to happen. And thank you, Council.
Thank you. How about a big round of applause for our panelists? Thank you very much. Once again, we're going to be sharing all of the presentations and links on my website within the next week or so. There is some literature on the back table as well, so check that out on your way out. If I can plug, we have a busy week of meetings coming up. On Thursday, we have a meeting about the Carp Road construction to expand Carp Road. That's on Thursday evening. Next Wednesday, we have a workshop with the OPP on how to avoid scams and fraud. You can subscribe to my email newsletter for updates on all these things. Thank you again to Kara and my team for your help setting this up, to Pat for technical assistance, and to the Lions. And thank you to all of you for spending your Monday night with us. Take care.